We have one person? Okay. So real quick again, first speaking will be DPS Commissioner Bob Jacobson, then Governor Walz. After that, the DNR Commissioner Sarah Strowman. I'm sorry, there's another chair here. What happened to that?
Oh, I'm sorry, I get to sit here. Do you need me to move it back?
Yep, actually, and as I mentioned earlier, some chairs in this front row needed to be for some of the directors.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be less than that.
We're not able to ask questions from behind the camera, that's the problem, you know,
Okay.
it's hard to get
Yep,
through.
I understand.
Move it to right between
But some of the people speaking are gonna be here as well. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Director, if you wanna come up, we can get you a chair over here. Let's see.
Yeah, they're gonna start a little early, Amber.
Julie, can you pull a chair over here, please, to the side and give the director a spot to sit? I thought I mentioned that earlier. Maybe I didn't communicate that well enough. Okay, thank you. Sure, right to the side or something there, or off to the side a little bit more, maybe. Sorry about that, Director. I apologize for that. Commissioner Strowman. Following that will be DNR Director Director of Forestry Patty Thelen, and then DPS Assistant Commissioner John Cunningham. Major General Sean Mankey from the National Guard will be after that. After that, we'll take some questions. As a reminder, before you ask your first question, please introduce yourselves and your media organization. Any questions for me? Great, thank you. All right, folks. No,
Otherwise that.
Absolutely.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bob Jacobson. I'm the Commissioner of Public Safety, and thank you all for being here today. We're going to have several speakers here today to cover some of the details of the fires that have been going on in northeastern Minnesota. But first of all, I just want to say, number one, certainly our thoughts go out to all those who have been impacted by the fires, those who have been displaced. It certainly has been a traumatic and difficult time, I know, for many of those who are living in those areas impacted by the fires. I also want to go on record just to thank our first responders who are out there working in really difficult conditions, who are out there trying to fight these fires and to make sure that they're taking care of our communities each and every day, and especially during this really difficult time. Our first responders are out there. Again, their first consideration is life safety, so everything they're doing, first priority is life safety. Second priority is certainly property and saving property. And a reminder that as they're working through the life safety and then property, we know that people want to get back into those areas, but please, heed our warnings, pay attention to what we're asking people to do, which is to stay out of those areas until it's cleared. I know our first responders want to be able to get people back into their homes as quickly as possible, but again, please be patient. Safety is the number one consideration for us. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our Governor, Tim Walz. Governor.
Commissioner. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today. Commissioner Jacobson, thank you. You're going to hear from some of our experts, including Director of Forestry Thelen, and of course, after I finish here with DNR Commissioner Strowman. I would echo those thoughts. Last night was a lot of our firefighters out there with no sleep, really tough conditions, and pretty dangerous fires that are out there. And I think the conditions that we've seen, incredibly dry, been in drought for some, of course, these unseasonably high temperatures, and then exceedingly low humidity have created a really difficult situation. And just to get an idea of what we've been dealing with this fire season, Minnesota experiences a little over 1,100 fires a year. We've already had 970. Sunday alone, we had 40. Monday, which was the first day of this incident, that was on Sunday. On Monday, we had another 40 fires, so we had over 80 fires burning. Many of those have been contained and are under control. There are three big ones where you'll hear the details about. The Camp House fire you keep hearing about is the one that has burned 80 structures and is a pretty dangerous one. So you're going to hear about these three fires. You're going to hear about the interagency coordination that's happening with both local agencies, the Minnesota DNR, our partners in the Forestry Service, communicating up to the federal government about what's happening here. These fires, by the way, and you'll hear more details on them, they are 0% contained at this time. These are dangerous fires that are still moving, still threatening. I would make the case, and again, the plea, for your own safety, if folks come along and ask for an evacuation, I know these are difficult decisions to make. We would ask that you please do so. It's not only for your own safety, it's for the firefighters' safety, because protecting these buildings and life puts them at risk. And also, just don't burn. This is, I think, a statewide thing. Whether we get something out and we put something as alerts, it is just too hot, too dry, too dangerous, and our resources will get spread too thin, because what's going into these 3 fires, and again, on Sunday, when they first started, these folks knew what was coming. They were prepared for it. We put the guard on alert. General Menke will talk about that. Yesterday, I signed the executive order activating them, and those Chinooks are in the fight right now with our members of the Minnesota National Guard. So developing situation, still incredibly dangerous. It's going to take a few days. We're hoping again that Thursday looks like there's some rain and some cooler temperatures on the horizon. But this is going to be an ongoing battle probably throughout most of the summer. And I think right now it's important for us to start thinking about the habits we're doing, start thinking about containment, and making sure that we're prepared to protect property and, of course, most importantly, protect life. With that, I'm going to turn it over to DNR Commissioner Strowman.
Thank you, Governor. And as you noted, Minnesota is experiencing a very rapidly changing early wildfire season. Our fire danger conditions have been very high during many periods this spring, and they have been in extreme conditions since May 11th. There are a number of factors that are contributing to these conditions, including uncommonly dry fuels, warm temperatures, and increasing drought across the state. With these conditions, none of the current fires across the state are easily suppressed, and they require considerable time and resources to extinguish. As the governor noted, to date in 2025, we have had 970 fires on more than 37,000 acres in Minnesota. While we have many active fires across the state and we are containing many of those fires, the 3 largest fires receiving the most attention at this moment, none of which are contained, include the Camp House, the Jenkins Creek, and the Munger Shaw fires in St. Louis County. We are working to suppress fires across the state with local, state, and national resources both on the ground and in the air. In Minnesota, we have a very unique, very effective system. It is a cooperative approach that pools resources from federal and state partners that manage wildfire under the Minnesota Incident Command System, or MINICS. That system works very well, and it is working for Minnesota as we speak. As our responders are working to suppress the fires given the extreme conditions, it is also very important, I want to stress this as the governor did, Minnesotans need to pay attention to and take very seriously the burning restrictions from Minnesota DNR and the red flag warnings from the National Weather Service. With a critical potential for fires, every wildfire puts life and property at risk if not quickly extinguished. And as you can see, our resources are stretched across the state. Finally, I want to note that while the situation is dynamic and dangerous, Minnesotans can be very proud of the response systems that we have in place and how our emergency responders work together to protect life, property, and our natural resources. I'm incredibly grateful to our DNR wildland firefighters, our partners who manage wildfire under the Minnesota Incident Command System, the National Guard, and our other state, local, and national partners. Now for some of the more specific details on the 3 wildfires, on those 3 wildfires, I want to introduce Patty Thelen. She is the director of the Forestry Division at Minnesota DNR.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good afternoon. As both the governor and the commissioner mentioned, these have been a challenging several days. I've worked for DNR Forestry for nearly 30 years, and the weather the last few days is just really unprecedented. Really low humidity, high winds that has allowed fires to spread really quickly. I want to point out that we've been successful. Our firefighters have been successful at keeping well over 70 fires very small and getting them put out quickly. There's a few fires that grew very quickly and are a little more challenging. The camp house fire was the first of these. It was first reported Sunday afternoon, just north of Brimson, Minnesota, which is northwest of Duluth. Currently, it's about 11,780 acres. You're going to hear changing numbers all the time because it's constantly evolving. Second, the Jensen Creek fire was reported Monday afternoon, yesterday, and it's currently about 6,800 acres. That's about 5 miles northwest of the camp house fire, but it is a separate fire with a separate origin. We've assigned incident management teams to each of these 2 fires. Those management teams train to come in and manage large fires like this and allow our local staff to be freed up for initial attack on new fires. The third fire this week was the larger fire this week was the Munger Shaw fire, about 20 miles northwest of Duluth. Reported Monday afternoon, later in the afternoon, about 1,400 acres, and this fire is currently being managed by DNR staff. Minnesota has called in a larger incident management team that will be arriving here in the state later today, and hopefully will take control of the Camp House fire and the Jenkins Creek fire tomorrow morning. This larger team will manage the 2 as the Brimson complex. And again, we hope they will take charge at about 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. This is gonna free up those incident management teams to be assigned to other fires. One of them will probably be assigned to the Munger Shaw fire. We've got aerial resources based in 7 locations around the state. We're using all of our resources within the state, from DNR, from the Forest Service, other agencies that participate in wildfire suppression, and we're also getting help from across the country. There's resources that are being moved here to help us with these challenges. Situation is constantly evolving, and unfortunately we expect the weather today and tomorrow to continue to be dry and windy. We are hopeful that the forecast for lower temperatures and precipitation on Thursday will give us a little bit of a break. There's still going to be a lot of work to do, but that will allow suppression to be a little bit easier. Again, these fires are 0% contained so far, and we're working hard towards containment. I really appreciate the work of our firefighters. All of our firefighters were working all weekend, opening fishing weekend, Mother's Day, and I'm so thankful that they were on duty and ready to take the call and jump on these fires. They've done great work, and I really appreciate their efforts. Assistant Commissioner Jacobson, I think, is next.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Cunningham. I'm the Assistant Commissioner of Emergency Services for the Minnesota Department of Public Safety. I just want to echo the Governor. What's been said before is just thank you to all of our first responders for responding to this call for service in greater Minnesota, as well as just across the entire state. These are really unprecedented conditions that we're seeing not only in the northern end of the state, but also the warnings just that exist across Minnesota as a whole. And I do encourage everyone just to please heed the warnings that are out there. Let the firefighters do the work that they've been called to do. And bear in mind, a lot of our local first responders, these are volunteers that are serving their community. They've been working around the clock with very little or no sleep. So getting this additional support is much needed. And Minnesota is really exceptional at providing mutual aid to our partners. And this has been an all hands on deck from a local, state, and federal response. So we appreciate the partnerships that have existed for quite some time, and this is certainly being demonstrated in the days previous as well as in the days coming up. Just want to provide a little bit of an overview of what the Department of Public Safety is doing. We are here to support our local agencies as well as our state partners as well as our federal partners. Specifically, the State Fire Marshal Division has working relationships every day with our local fire service agencies. They are embedded not only with the Minnesota Interagency Fire Center, but also assisting on the ground with staging manager support. And those are fire service leaders that came from the fire service that have this experience to help with staging and deploy resources to assist with protecting structures that might be threatened. We also have specialists that are working around the clock to help mobilize fire departments from around the state. We have 2 regions that are actively supporting from local fire departments to help support local fire departments that are being impacted by this major event in northern Minnesota. The Minnesota State Fire Chiefs Association is across the state and actually partners with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety and State Fire Marshal to get resources from local fire departments across the state to help support these efforts and provide also backfill to give some of these fire departments a little bit of a rest so that they can serve their local communities. We will continue to support that through the mutual aid system and to support our state and federal partners in the days to come. Also, our Homeland Security and Emergency Management Division is also actively working with this incident and partnering with our state and federal partners to support the ongoing operation to make sure that as resources become depleted, as we look towards the future, that we have enough resources to continue the operation to suppress these fires and to get communities back into a safe environment. We have regional program coordinators that are on the ground supporting local operations, including the Sheriff's Office, the Rescue Squad, that has been instrumental in helping with evacuations and keeping the area safe. We also have stood up an active monitoring posture within our statewide emergency operations center to field any requests that are coming from the field to ensure that all the state agencies and federal partners are collaborating and working together, which has been great over the last few days. And we're ready to look at the big picture, as we have been doing over the last several days since Sunday, of the ongoing threat that exists not only in northern Minnesota, but just across the state of Minnesota as additional, if any additional incidents do occur. We are sharing information with all state agencies. We've also briefed our FEMA region just so that they're tracking and that we're ready to pivot and increase any monitoring or any additional support that we can to continue to support operations on the ground. And the one thing that I also want to point out is while this incident is active and the firefight is ongoing, we are here for the long haul. Recovery is going to be vitally important for the communities that are being impacted. So we will be here in the days and weeks and months to come to help this area recover once the flames are extinguished. As you can see, some of the pictures that are just being displayed, this is a significant event. This is a beautiful area of Minnesota, which is bound in just natural habitat. But this is a very dangerous area right now. We have pilots that are doing exceptional work on picking water up at a very limited access lakes and dropping that water and just staying away from those areas, letting the aircraft do the work that they need to do so that they can continue to fight this operation. With that, I will now turn it over for comments from Major General Mankey. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Commissioner. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Major General Sean Mankey, and I'm humbled and honored to be the Adjutant General of your Minnesota National Guard. So I'll just kind of highlight a couple things. The governor mentioned it. Commissioner Jacobson and I talked late Sunday, and the governor had an executive order ready for us to go. So when we came in Monday morning, we were in contact with the Fire Center up in Grand Rapids, working with Commissioner Strowman and her crew. An agency that we train with routinely on an annual basis. The decision was made late Monday morning, and we sent 2 aircraft up out of our St. Paul facility Monday afternoon, and they are part of our 34th Combat Aviation Brigade. And likewise, we supported them with refueling assets from our 148th Fighter Wing out of Duluth, Minnesota. And those aircraft were on station late yesterday into the evening. And then this morning, we sent another 2 additional aircraft up there out of our St. Cloud Army Aviation Support Facility, one Chinook and one Blackhawk. And the one Blackhawk is equipped with external hoist capability in case it's needed, God forbid, in an emergency or something like that. But, we are ready because of the training that I said we do with our DNR. Our motto, always ready, always there, I think is relevant in this case. And I'm extremely proud of the partnership that we have with our DNR and our national partners to combat this type of disaster when it happens in a state, and proud of our soldiers and airmen who support us each and every day. We live here, we serve here, and we work here. And we'll continue to do what we can to support this effort and be ready for what's next. With that, I think I'll turn it over to the governor and the team for any questions if there are any.
Thanks, General.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Well, thank you. Another thank you for all the folks working on this. The coordination is there. Minnesota knows how to do this. The systems are in place. Folks have been alerted, and I appreciate the point from Assistant Commissioner Cunningham talking about, because people are going to be interested in this. We're still in the fight. There's a long ways to go here, but there'll be the recovery and the damage assessment. Those will go on, and we will start to see that. Contact, as you heard, has already been made with FEMA and my team before I came over here, contact with the Trump administration to let them know this is an ongoing developing situation that will take some time, and we'll see when it's all over and the assessments come in if we're going to need some of that federal assistance. But with that, any of us would take some questions. Yes.
Danny Spivak, Carolyn. Can someone just, whether it's you or anybody up on the panel, just explain the scale of this?
Yeah.
Historically, what does this look like compared to what we've seen?
Overall, what's the scale of this? It's hard to say because the fires continue to grow. But as of this morning, I think we have had over 37,000 acres of fires, and in an average year, give me a moment here. I think in an average year, we have about 12,000 acres. So we've already had over 3 times as many fire acres as in a normal full year, and it's only the middle of May. This is usually our busiest time of year for fires, in April and May. So it's not an unusual season, but it's been a really tough year.
And based on the current forecast and outlook for the summer, I know MPCA talked about this in terms of wildfire smoke and things last week, but like, it sounds like you do think that this is going to be a longer season or a worse season because of dry, hot overall forecast this summer, or is it hard to say right now?
I'm not a meteorologist. I'm a forester by training. So we're hearing some predictions for the summer. It could be challenging.
Quinn Gorham, KPPC, Northern News Now, KUIC. I am wondering if either you, Director, or Commissioner Strowman could talk a little bit about how this springtime kind of fire outbreak we're seeing compares to years past. I mean, is it typical to see this kind of fire in the spring? I mean, this is something that I feel like usually comes in late summer.
In Minnesota, our typical fire season begins as soon as the snow melts. We've got a lot of dead, dry fuels out there before things green up. So from when the snow melts until green up is our normal fire season. We sometimes have a second fire season in the fall. Sometimes there's not much. In my first half of my career, generally there was snow through March and into April. Sometimes we had some fires in March, but the heavy season was April and May. Over the last several years, the fire seasons have started earlier. We've had fires in February. We've had fires in January, when normally there's snow cover that doesn't allow fires to spread. So the weather has not been cooperating for us, and it seems like we've had more fires earlier in the year than we ever have before.
I just want to add to that against Sarah Strowman, Commissioner at Minnesota DNR. We are seeing part of the effects of climate change, right? And that's what Director Thelen is talking about when she's seen the change over her career. And so it is hard to compare what has been historically the normal fire season pattern in the state of Minnesota and what we are seeing now and going forward. We are trending towards hotter, drier weather, and that is going to change the fire situation. We are tending towards more extreme precipitation events. So, we had a lot of rain recently here in Minnesota, and then it suddenly got very dry, right? It is not evenly spread. And so that also changes the nature of the fire season. And so I just think it's important to remember that what we have historically seen in a fire season is changing, and that is something that Director Thelen and her fire team and our interagency system across Minnesota is thinking about, is how do we prepare in different ways to address what is a changed environment.
Governor, have you been in conversations with the President or his administration about this situation information yet?
No, not specific. My team, when I came over here just a little after noon, knew that we were talking to the FEMA folks in the usual chain of command, but I asked them, and they are now making contact up to the administration, let them know this is ongoing. And at this point in time, we know how this works. We know the system or whatever. I'm going to assume that the changes that have been made at the federal government have not gutted FEMA, have not gutted our responders. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because we know how this is going to work. We know the responses, and I will say at this point in time, there's no reason to believe anything has changed. Our folks are responding. Our resources there. We're doing the fight that needs to be there. But I do want them to make sure that asked it to raise it up to that level to know that this one, I think, is going to. When you hear 80 structures burned in the first day, that's pretty challenging. That's going to add up very quickly.
Jason Ransel, WCCO TV. Are we worried about these fires impacting urban areas, cities in the area?
Yeah, I will maybe let the experts talk about that. I think that's the concern, that it's dry everywhere. I'll re-stress that, careful around fires in general, but I'll let folks talk about that a little bit.
So probably the biggest concern is what we call the urban interface. So where there are communities that butt up against the forest, where there are individual homes that are out in the forest. That's where in Minnesota we have the biggest concerns. We do training to train our firefighters on how to assess these areas and how to protect them as best we can. I think today we're probably less worried about true urban areas that are concrete, and the urban interface is where we have the biggest struggles, and some of the fires this week are definitely in those kinds of areas.
Great question, though. I appreciate that one because I think all of us are still Los Angeles and the things that happened. I think keeping an eye on that. So I appreciate the question. And these smaller communities and folks' houses losing their houses, they're pretty traumatic. I think, again, stressing our condolences to folks out there who are picking up now with nothing as their homes were burned. And I believe 40 of those buildings that were burned were residents, and they've been reported.
To kind of bounce off that question, do we have a pretty good idea of the direction the winds are going right now? Are those changing? Is that a dynamic that we're able to track, or is that kind of an unpredictable factor in this?
This is a good point. These modeling, and the modeling changes now with as climate changes too.
Sure, we keep our fingers on the pulse of the weather and what is coming. Knowing about a wind change is particularly important. Some of these fires are long. They were spread from wind blowing in one direction, and if the wind suddenly changes 90 degrees, then you've got a long fire that can spread in another direction. It's something that we track closely so that we can fine-tune our suppression efforts and try to get containment as quickly as possible.
I have a question here from NPR.
Hi, Erica Zurich, NPR News. Can you elaborate more on what help Minnesota is getting from other states?
I don't have a detailed list with me, although I know we've gotten some aerial resources, some planes from Wisconsin and I believe Michigan. We've gotten some ground resources in engines from Wisconsin and North Dakota and Ontario. And now I believe we've got about a 20-person crew coming in from Colorado. I think there's another crew on its way as well. I'm not sure from where. Fire has a really elaborate system across the country, excuse me, for moving resources around to where they're needed.
Thank you. Couple more on topic or off topics?
If I would just mention before we take off topic, legislative leaders, because we're spending a lot of time together, we're briefed this morning. They're staying in and being briefed through this entire process too. With that, any off?
Just an update on, we're hearing you're closer today than
Yeah.
yesterday. Are you gonna have targets today, and what are the prospects at this point of, even if you get a deal today, needing a special session?
Yeah, we talked about that, and I know it was on this date. We said yesterday at 5:40, we had pictures from the 2019 session that showed we were able to get done. If you recall that one, things were pretty much wrapped up, but the revisers and the folks getting it done. recalled us to come back for a morning to actually cast the votes or whatever. We're probably getting pretty close to that. I can say that it has been very productive. It's moving. I will still say the tone of these are really encouraging, respectful differences, ideological differences still working. Look, that needed to be done last Friday. I think that was really it. I am still hopeful today that we will get targets. We'll get them moved on. We'll take care of some of the issues that were peripheral, that were important to each of the caucuses, and get those done. So it's still moving. We're going to head back. We're scheduled again at 1:30 for the next session, and still productive.
Do you think you could have those targets and policies?
I think it's possible. You know, I know I'm being pretty ambitious with them now because we got to get out of that room for numerous reasons. One is we need to get them to get their work done, but I think there's still an outside chance. But I think the thing is when we rush the revisers and things, you might have a chance for some of these errors in drafting, and I think it's better for us to give the time necessary. So I think we're getting close to that point, but still an opportunity.
Governor, have you found the current thin margins in the Senate tie in the House harder to navigate than previous years?
Well, it's just a little different dynamic. I think it's similar to 2019 where we got some agreements on this. I think there's, it's a unique dynamic where you've got a tie in, 1/3 of the triangle, if you will. The Senate has their voice, the House has their voice, and of course the administration, and in the House they're split. I think I want to thank the leadership of Speakers Demuth and Hortman, have both navigated this. And this is tough. The caucuses hold together. They want movement on their issues, and I think they're navigating them well. I do think, the proof's in the pudding. The results are what are really going to matter. But I do think the process does matter in this. This has been incredibly cordial. We're spending a lot of time yesterday, 10, 11 hours in the room together, and it's remained positive for Minnesota.
In a hypothetical situation where a special session is needed, not saying that's going to
Yeah.
happen, but what might that look like? Would the legislature adjourn on?
It's what they did on 2019. If we just got everything done, except we didn't want to, the revisers didn't have time to finish things up. We got a deal. I think everybody's there. We did it in 2019. I believe we came back on the Thursday following adjournment, and they spent 6 hours, and then, we're able to vote on it and get it done because the agreement was made. So it would be more perfunctory. I still think there's a chance we can get this thing by the time, but I think as the hours go by, it becomes a little more difficult.
Governor, I want to ask you about a scope of practice expansion for optometry.
Yeah.
Optometrists are seeking to be able to injections and prescribe medications. Do you support this kind of expansion?
Look, we'll see when it comes to it. Scope of practices are always really challenging. I know that as a member of Congress, I saw it, and I know the issue here is the ability for optometrists to give. Mostly is what they're talking about is some of the in-office things, of course, the injections and things. Ophthalmologists are medically trained. I don't want to upset the negotiations they're having at that right now, but I think scope of practice needs to be based on the data. It needs to be based on the science behind it, and try and keep folks as much as possible. With that being said, delivery of services to folks is also a consideration. I know that's one of the issues being made here. Is it easier to get into an optometrist than an ophthalmologist just by the sheer numbers? So I would leave it at this point in time. I think they're negotiating in good faith. I think the safety of Minnesotans is the top priority in that.
All right, well, we're up there. Thanks, everyone.
Great. We'll keep you updated. Thanks, team. Thanks, Director.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. John, thank you. Great. Well, tell your folks stay safe.